Good afternoon. Good morning, everyone. Hello, my name is Matt Tague. I am the director of the Customer Talent Advisory team here at GEM. We're a unique team. We have the opportunity to work with many of GEM's most strategic customers to help advise them on their strategy, their goals, and really, sitting at the forefront of what TA leaders are thinking about today. So, today's session, really exciting session. I think it's going to be very timely for a lot of folks. We're focusing on how to enable TA to be a strategic partner and a strategic function. So if you're a TA leader or you're an aspiring TA leader and you're looking to understand how to operate more strategically, especially in these times, this is the session for you. So with that, I'm very pleased to join my special guest today, Allyn Bailey. She is the Executive Director of Hiring Success at Smart Recruiters. So with that, I'd like to welcome Allyn to the stage. Welcome, Allyn.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here. Excited about the conversation.
Yeah, I think this is a timely one. I think we've both been looking forward to this. But before we kick off, I'd love to hear just a bit about you, your role, your background, just to get us started.
Right. So actually I have a very similar role to yours within Smart Recruiter. So I'm the Executive Director of Hiring Success, which is our especially consulting services where we work with TA organizations, small to large, global to hometown, who are trying to look at their larger TA strategies, right? How do they become a strategic function? How do they combine technology with process? And people and roles and skills and capabilities. And so my team goes in and spends time working hand in hand with those teams, understanding what's happening today, assessing their current state, and helping them paint a picture for how they build their strategy going forward. Previous to that, I've worked many years in the strategy space for TA, working at several large enterprises. And so, I'm excited. This is a space I love. I'm passionate about talent acquisition, which is I know it happens to a lot of people after we start getting in the door. And I'm excited about where we're evolving and where we're going. I think this is a particularly timely conversation because I think there's a lot of companies today who are saying it's about time for us to start moving into that strategic space, but are questioning how to do it.
100%. Yeah. And thank you for that. And I think we're so excited to have you be part of this conversation. You have such a unique vantage point, as you mentioned, you're meeting TA leaders day in and day out, seeing what's actually happening. You've got your previous experience. We've talked about becoming a strategic function for years in the space, right? That's meant different things at different times. What do you see that's happening now? Like, what's your read on the space now? Like, why now for this conversation?
Well, I think, fundamentally, the entire world of work has shifted so dramatically and is continuing to shift from underneath the feet of HR leaders, TA leaders, CEOs, and business leaders alike, right? We are facing this evolution of work that's happened kind of post-COVID. Employees, candidates, everybody is having a different set of expectations. Leaders are trying to understand what types of skills and talents they're going to need, and how they're going to get those people to both want to come and work for them and then to stay for the long period, and how does that all wrap together, become one unified strategy. So I think we're at this unique moment in time where TA leaders are suddenly being asked to answer bigger questions than how fast can you fill, and are now being asked to answer questions like, could I even fill? Should I fill? What is the risk? What does it take for me to be able to bring the best talent in the door and to get them to want to engage at the level I need them to engage? From a set of CEOs who are facing a new world in front of them, where they are both challenged with how they're going to innovate, but also fearful of possible recessions and downturns that are heading their direction. Mm-hmm. It is unlike any environment I think any of us have seen in the past. It is completely new and fresh, and TA leaders are being asked to address these problem statements and be at the table and have a conversation. And that's forcing TA leaders to ask different questions to themselves. What does that mean for us as a function? How do we start to operate differently? How do I answer these questions when they're being asked? What data do I need to have in front of me to be able to answer those questions, and where do I get it from? So when I talk to TA leaders across the board, those are the types of questions they're asking us.
Love it. Yeah. And I think that's going to resonate a lot with our audience. I know that resonates a lot with me, all those points there. So I think that sets the stage perfectly. So let's get into it. We've got about 20 plus minutes, and then we're going to open it up for questions at the end. I think this could be a much longer multi-hour conversation. It may be some point in the future. So we've chatted about a couple of themes, prior to kicking this off, Allyn. And I think the one thing I'd love to start off with is mindset shift. Right. So we talked about this distinction between cost center versus value center or value driver. For a TA leader in this space, what do you think is the difference between those two mindsets? Tell us a couple of points that you see that differentiate those.
Well, I think fundamentally it's about, do you consider yourself a transactional entity, right? Is your job just to see, fill, and kind of push people through the system? Mm-hmm. Or are you involved, and do you want to be involved in the conversations about should you be pushing people through the system in the first place, right? So the difference between being transactional in my mind and thinking about yourself as a value player is, are you involved in the conversations about how fast, how many, and when, right? Which is a lot of the transactional questions. Or are you involved in the questions of should we, could we, and how? And if you're in those questions, then you're starting to get into that value chain. And I think that's where our leaders, our CEOs are looking for talent leaders to step up and to ask.
Definitely. Yeah. I think all of those points are excellent. And just to dive in on one of those more distinctly there, you talk about being in the meeting, right? And I know I've seen this in my career where TA leaders are often given marching orders from whether it's finance or HR, but they're not involved in the creation of those in many times, right? And so those demands are often created without an appreciation for what implications that will have in a TA org. Like, will it require more recruiters or more coordinators or more interviewing hours? It's just a number on a page on a spreadsheet, right? And then that causes all kinds of issues, as we know. What is your advice? Like, how do TA leaders get in those pre-meetings that happen for the creation phase versus the implementation phase of hiring demand? What does that look like for you?
Well, I mean, I think there's 2 points to this, right? So the first is, how do you get into that meeting in the first place? What is that song from Hamilton, The Room Where It Happened, right? Mm-hmm. How do you get into that room, and how do you be in that space? And some of that is about, have you proven your value up until this point, right? How have you been showing up and driving more strategic thought previous to that conversation being had? What conversations are you leading with? When you go and share with business leaders what's going on from a talent acquisition perspective, are you leading with cost per hire numbers, or are you leading with a state of the market, right? How are you driving that conversation? That sets the precedence for whether or not people would even think to bring you in the first place. But the second side to that is if they didn't bring you in, or even if you're sitting in that room and you're not getting maybe the understanding or the full scope, they're not fully understanding the scope of what they're asking and the implications. How are you approaching that when that does happen, right? And I think too often TA leaders feel like they're order takers and they have to take what's given to them. And they're going to go off and they're going to execute to it. And this is the perfect moment in time when they need to step back and politely push back, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a couple of reasons people get in the room where it happened, right? They get in the room where it happened because there was a preconceived idea that somebody should bring them in because, they provided me some great insight previously, so I'm going to perceive them as value, so I'm going to bring them in the door. Or they're in the room where it happened because they're known for being somebody who's going to push back if their insights weren't taken into account, right? If you're known as somebody who's just going to take it on the chin and do as you're told, and not ask any questions, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? It's the way that world works. And we're taught not to do that. We're taught to be customer focused. We're taught to do is to help support. But sometimes in order to do that well, you have to be the squeaky wheel to come up and say, if I do this, here are the consequences. And let me give you a business case for how we might do something differently. Yeah,
that's exactly right. And I think telling that story is often a challenge, right? So I think there's often a desire by TA leaders to do that, and they can see that conceptually. But what data do you need to tell that story, right? I think we've talked a lot about data previously in our prior conversations, but bringing in, just what happened is probably not good enough in that meeting. Like, what other things do you see, top level TA leaders bringing into those meetings to be that
Right.
proactive squeaky wheel that you mentioned?
Right. I love how you said that, right? We so often today manage our TA functions based on what happened before. It's that reporting data, which is, that's nice. It's to prove and to validate that we're valuable, right? To go, oh, look, I did this much work, right? Mm-hmm. And I think instead the type of data we need to bring in is data that is scenario driven, data that helps tell a story about what could happen in various different circumstances, and data that helps articulate the likelihood that different circumstances could happen. And I know that feels like a broad range of things, but it really is a different mindset when you're going in to that dialogue and conversation. It says, what is the information? What is the information I can gather, whether it be through my systems that I have today to help me do proactive planning or modeling? What is the data I can leverage out in the market, or even from historical data that can help me articulate the likelihood of different scenarios to occur? And how can I pair those together to paint a picture of, here are the options in front of us. Here's the likelihood of these different options being viable and successful. And now let's have a conversation about which lever we want to pull and the consequences of that. Data that helps drive that sort of analytical thinking is helpful to business leaders. Data that talks about whether or not you met your expectations and the volume of work that you did only puts you in the position to be thought of as somebody who could do more work because you successfully articulated that you could do things. Great.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I think we see that too, in the customers we work with, and I'm sure you have something similar. Mm-hmm. It's a maturity scale, right? So I think you see some leaders operate with no data, which would not be ideal, but that's the reality for some companies. Others are on spreadsheets, right? And they're exporting data and bringing it together in various ways. Also not so great, not truly strategic. And then you have others that use, systems like a Smart Recruiters or like a GEM, or pair those together, and you have accurate real-time, historical data there. But tell me about, like, what are some of the areas beyond that I think we had talked about some of these, but what would you, if you had a scenario where you had clean core system data, what one or two things would you add on to that to make that even more strategic?
Right. So I want market data, right? I want market data, and I want to be able to overlay market data with my historical data and with my current availability data, right? Because one of the top questions that you need to be able to answer as a TA leader is, what is the need that the company has, and what is my likelihood to be able to meet that need? And where am I going to, and how am I going to do that, right? And the how now means I need to have data that starts to talk to me about what it takes to be able to find talent in different locations and different types. How do I build my pipe? How strong is my pipe? How relevant is my pipe, right? So I'm a strong advocate of anything that helps you talk about your pipeline capabilities, and connects it to your market availability data and your market condition data, right? Where you need, and by the way, the difference between, I had a great partner in crime who I worked with for a long time at the enterprise level, who was a data analyst, right? In fact, I would call him more of a data wizard, right? And the first thing that he taught me was, it isn't, having data in front of you is helpful, but it's not the data itself which helps you. It is, are you able to ask questions based on that data and then be comfortable making assumptions, right? Because it's all then about, so much of the transactional data we use today, we've gotten ourselves used to it from a TA perspective, is about kind of saying, if X, then Y, and I can prove it, right? When you're really getting into strategic business decisions and analytical data, it's about looking at multiple sources of data and then making good decisions based on looking at that data and making assumptions that you can feel relatively comfortable with based on the quality of the data sets that you have in front of you. Assumptive data and making assumptions and doing forecasting in those spaces is a different type of strategic muscle for our TA leaders to use. So
Definitely.
that was a long answer to the question, which was, yes, I want to know about my pipelines. I want to know about my market, and I want to know about the company itself and the company's forecast and future frame, right?
Yeah.
That data helps me then analyze what I have in front of me in terms of talent. Right?
Exactly. So on a transactional side, it's about just what happened simply, but
Yeah.
moving to be strategic, it's about what might happen, the forecasting and modeling piece there.
That's right. And there's no special, like, there's no special moment where you're suddenly going to look at forecasting data and say, this is the truth. This is exactly what's going to happen, and I'm 100% certain of it, right? Because the whole point of forecasting is making good bets and assumptions, right, based on data. It can point you in a direction, but you still have to use your own kind of strategic frame around that to decide if you find it relevant and useful for you. And that's where we get uncomfortable. If we're used to looking only at transactional data, we get very uncomfortable with forecasting or looking at analytics at a deeper level, because it does mean there's a little bit more, kind of gotten behind the scenes. Do I feel good about it? That for some reason we think we're not supposed to do, but that's exactly what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. And I think we've chatted about this previously too, but I think in general, a lot of TA leaders or TA teams, they let perfect be the enemy of the good. Right?
Yeah.
So because the models may not be 100% perfectly predictive and accurate, we would opt for no model in some cases. And I'm curious if you've seen that dynamic and how do leaders get around it?
How many companies, I know you work with them, I work with them, I've been in them, and I talk to them every day, who still are not comfortable talking about quality of hire, right? To me, that's the classic example for us, right? Quality of hire is a basic metric that we should be leveraging, but we're afraid to use it because it's not perfect. There are so many things that influence quality of hire. Yep, get it. As with most things, nothing is cut and dry. And you have to find a formula that you feel comfortable enough to start to baseline and work from there. But so many companies get so caught up in this. I have yet to see, I've yet to work with an enterprise customer, for example, who is willing to stand down and say, this is my quality of hire number that I'm going to work off of and work from there. They're all afraid to put a stake in the sand on it. And to me, that's a great example of not being able to have a strategic conversation because we're so afraid of having to be perfect.
Yep, exactly. And if we don't start somewhere with that as a space, as a function, we can't improve on that over time, right?
That's right.
So that's right. Yeah, definitely resonate with that for sure. Yeah. Excellent. So I think, we've touched on the data piece. I'd love to talk about stakeholders a little bit. So I know you have some thoughts on this here too, but I think oftentimes TA leaders will get siloed in this, working to the needs of a business unit leader, an eng leader, maybe a CHRO, some a little bit beyond that, but who should those stakeholders be? How do they access those? What does that look like in best in class companies you've seen?
So I think best in class TA leaders and in best in class companies, they are understanding that there's a difference between the relationship they have with their customer, right? And how they manage their customer, right? Which is business leaders, hiring managers who are looking to get something from you, right? Which is talent, fill my talent, versus stakeholder relationships, which are much more about how are you building your relationships and muscle across the organization with decision makers who are going to help you move your strategy forward or give you insight to help you understand where your strategy needs to go. So for example, we've talked about this before, finance is a core stakeholder, right? There's a reason that we're always tracking cost to hire and all of those pieces, because we're always looking to finance to help understand what is the amount of money we can spend for talent, and how are we ramping against that, right? And we're having to leverage our finance partners to help us understand, can we afford the technology that we're looking at? Is it a relatively good bet for us to leverage it and utilize it? You can't wait to have a good finance conversation or get a good stakeholder alignment if your first conversation with them is the day you're in the RFP process, right? Yeah. Which many customers do. I say the same thing for IT, for our technology partnerships. All of those core areas. We need to have strong IT partnerships, strong finance partnerships, and then you need to have strong executive level stakeholder alignment and partnership, so you understand where the business is going, and they understand that you understand where the business is going. You can have a conversation about how your talent strategy helps support that.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think that's such an important point to double click on too, where I think a lot of teams will, they're engaging in hiring for hiring's sake, right? But one of the misses that I often see, and I'm sure you see this as well, is they don't tie their work into the strategic objectives and goals of the company, right? And it's simply just mapping, what are the values and goals of the company for that quarter, for that year, evergreen, and mapping what they're doing to that specifically to make it a corporate priority beyond just bringing people in the door. But curious your thoughts on that.
Well, absolutely. We talked about this. We've talked about this at length before. One of the fundamental things that a TA leader should be mapping against is revenue, right? Because the business drives off of revenue, right? At all levels. So how are you involved in that conversation? Are you able to look at your talent strategies, your execution, and be able to connect it up to whether you are increasing, decreasing, or stabilizing revenue, right? And that is the type of conversation that those sorts of stakeholders need us to be in.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think that gets back to your earlier point about metrics. So we are often, using internally focused TA metrics that we care about, cost per hire, time to fill, all of those things. And those are nice and great table stakes things, but we don't speak in the language of dollars.
Exactly. Right? Absolutely not. Again, because we act as if we are just an execution team. There is a task in front of us, and we measure and report on our ability to accomplish that task, right? Hire, here's how I hired, here's how much it cost me, here is how many I did and how fast I did it. Those are all efficiency metrics. And efficiency doesn't tell me quality, and it doesn't tell me if it met the real need of the business at all.
100%. Yeah. And I think, one of the last things I'd like to ask you as well is, it's almost this like language disconnect between the different departments. So we need to get better at speaking. Like if you're a Spanish speaker, you may understand Portuguese a bit, but you don't speak it, right? You need to do the work to speak that. So I'd love to know, like, what's your advice for someone who's earlier on their transition to being a strategic leader? How do they learn that language? What steps can they do tactically to understand the wants and needs of those partners that you mentioned?
I would say get out of our own conversations. We are good at talking to ourselves. We're doing it today. I love that. I love having the conversation with my peers. But the truth is, what are you reading? Where are you? What are you absorbing in terms of content? Whether it be short form or long form, what conversations are you having? So, it can be as simple as getting a good mentor, right? In the finance department or in the leadership team, and being very frank about the fact that you're wanting to understand how to translate what you do into the value that they articulate, right? The people will support you in that. And it can be but it can also be as simple as, read more of the Wall Street Journal and less of, HR.com.
Definitely. That resonates.
I'm not saying I don't like HR term. I do, but I'm just saying, you broaden your spectrum a little bit, and start immersing yourself in the language and things that matter to the people that you're actually trying to partner with.
Excellent. And then that fosters those relationships that builds your value as a strategic leader cross-functionally as well.
Exactly.
Excellent. I'd love to close. I think this could actually be, an hours long combo, as we've talked about. There's so much to uncover and unpack here. We don't have enough time for it all. But one thing I did want to ask you as well is, given this time, folks are facing uncertain demand. They're often, unclear about what's next. And that's always true to an extent in TA, but especially now, people are really thinking about that. So, for folks, that are on this journey to become the strategic partner, I'd love to hear two-part question. What do you think is the potential opportunity for these leaders? Like, what does great look like 6 months from now? And then, what's one thing that you want to leave folks that they can do tomorrow?
So I think one great looks like Are you in the room where it happened? Are you in those conversations, right? Great looks like you were there and you didn't have to burst down the door to get there. It was assumed that you were in that conversation, right? And we've talked about ways to do that and the ways to kind of get into that path. And then what was the second part of the question?
Yeah, what's one tactical thing if they can do one thing tomorrow?
One tactical thing that you can do tomorrow? Throw out your current dashboard and reframe your metrics.
Love it.
Honestly, I mean, if you want my honest opinion, it is quit measuring yourself like a transaction center and get busy measuring yourself against things the business cares about.
Excellent. Well, everyone, you heard it here first. So let's take a look at that tomorrow if you're not already doing that. So, Allyn, this has been excellent. Thank you so much for your time. So with that, we have a few minutes left for questions. Let's go ahead and open it up to the audience. We'd love to hear from everyone. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? Thoughts, comments? We'd really love to hear from you. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for that convo. Allyn, I love that conversation. I think that could easily go for several hours there, but fantastic. We've already got a lot of great questions in the chat, so we'll get to as many of these as we can over the next 3 or 4 minutes here. We're going to go rapid fire, but quickly, Allyn, tell me a lot about external market data. What are your 2 to 3 go-to sources there? Lots of interest in that in the chat there. Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. Oh my goodness. I'm professional. I got this under control. Market data. I'm going to give you a couple. This is by no means the only place that you can go, but places I frequently check out. I've used Talent Neuron a lot. I think they have some good access there. Gartner in general. You can usually get pointed to some great places. Salary.com has some interesting stuff that they're doing that you can leverage. If you haven't thought about it, or if you haven't taken a step back, look at your local or regional government employment and market statistics. They publish them all the time. And it's usually really valuable stuff if you're willing to dig into it. And usually they're just so excited to send it to anybody. If you contact them, they'll give it to you.
Awesome. Fantastic. Great insights there. Love that. Another question we got is around this concept of working with different metrics, talking in dollars versus the TA metrics we use. How do you think about helping stakeholders understand like the cost of doing nothing, the cost of indecision in terms of their planning? So if they're trying to finalize their headcount, they're not sure what to do. Yeah. Meanwhile, the TA team's waiting. When are we going to do it? When do we need to do it by? What do you use to help jumpstart that conversation?
Yeah, so I'm going to use that as a really tactical example. Okay, so we don't have the projections. We need to figure out how to make a plan and be able to go forward. I immediately produce a scenario that's side by side. One that says I have accurate data today and I can make a plan, and this is how much it's going to cost, or I'm going to project it's going to cost for me to meet your needs. I don't have it, and I'm not going to have it for another 60 days, which means I'm going to increase my cost by X%. To address the fact that I am having to pay more money because I'm having to move kind of quicker. I'm not able to have the ability to negotiate. I have all the other issues associated with it. And I show those numbers side by side. I'm like, you tell me what you need today, and I'm going to commit to being able to get it for you right around this cost in this range. I'm going to add a 20, 25%, sometimes 50% increase if you tell me later. And I'm going to throw those numbers right up in front of him and say, it's going to cost you real dollars, not to make a decision.
And that'll get attention. I'm sure of that. It does. And I think too, we talked about not letting perfect be the enemy of the good in a lot of this work, right? It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be good enough to engage that conversation in a language that the business understands. So love those
and by the way, we shouldn't be surprised. Business leaders understand the cost of decision delay. They have this issue themselves. So just by highlighting it and putting it in front of them, and giving them a blanket number. I mean, start having a blanket conversation that says, I'm always going to add 25% every month you delay of what my cost is going to be. They get that. They're not going to make you prove it. You're good.
Yep. Love it. Okay. We've got time for one more. We're going to rush it in here. Quality of hire. What's one thing you would look at?
I would look at retention rate. And then I would also look at promotion rate. So how are people moving across the company?
Fantastic. I think that could be a whole nother session for Talent Summit next year. So with that, we're going to wrap. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Gina for our next session. Thank you everyone so much for joining us and being part of this session here today.
Hey, everyone. Wow, thank you so much, Allyn and Matt. I loved your thoughts around how the leader of tomorrow will forecast what will happen, but they'll also model what would happen. It's so important to keep both of those in mind. Special shout out, thank you to Smart Recruiters for bringing this perspective into the fold, as well as being a platinum sponsor of Talent Summit 2022. We appreciate you so much. To everyone I don't know, which is most of you, my name is Gina. I work here at GEM, and I just wanted to flag that we're going to take a short content break, let you sit back, relax a little bit. We know we've been flooding you with so much information. Sessions will resume at 11:25, but for now, go grab some coffee, check out the rest of the event. You can do, you take your picture, you could tell your TA story, or you can stay here and play trivia with me. We are going to have a Kahoot of a good time. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I hope you'll participate if you're around. I wanted to quickly go over the guidelines. Kahoot is maybe new to some of you. So I wanted to quickly kind of give you an overview of what you'll do. So first things first, get your thinking caps on. I know I have mine ready to go. I wanted to flag that you'll be awarded points for correct answers and the speed of your response. So the quicker you respond, the more points that you'll get. We're doing 5 rounds of fun questions. Round 1 is meet me at the movies. Round 2 is what in the word. Round 3 is seafood. You're going to have to guess what the food is before the timer is up. Round 4, we're going to go on what's happening today in history, September 29th. And then round 5, we're going to round it out with random facts of kindness, just nice facts to kind of bring a smile to your face. We are giving prizes. First place will win a $500 gift card. Second place, $250 gift card. Third place, $100 gift card. So I'm going to transition my screen here. Uno momento. There we go. So join the game. Oh, looks like all of you have already figured it out. This is so exciting. Love this. So I'm going to go ahead and start. Maybe wait like 5 more seconds. It's really easy. You just go to kahootit.com, add in that pin, or you can expand, or you can use this QR code here to get in there. So I'll give it like 3 more minutes because we are on a time crunch. I'm going to start it. All right, let's get into it. Our first question is going to come up here. We are going to do a practice round to make sure that you are all squared away. Who is this artist? Is it Lizzo? Is it Frizzo? Is it Wizzo? Is it Mizzo? I'm going to give you a hint. It's the one in red. So practice it out, suss it out. Well done, everybody. Let's go. Let's keep it rolling. All right, we've got the scoreboard going. All right, so round 1, meet me at the movies. How many Oscars has Meryl Streep been nominated for? Not won, but nominated for. She's very good. Devil Wears Prada. I'm trying to think of other movies she's in, but all I can think of is Devil Wears Prada. And Doubt, that's another good one that she's in. All right, about 3 more seconds here. Let's see. 21 was the answer. So 50 of you got it right. She has been nominated that many times. We're going to keep cruising along here. Who is the only person to ever receive an Oscar nomination for acting in a Star Wars movie? Was it Alec Guinness, Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, or Harrison Ford? The clock is ticking, so get your answer in there before we are done. We've got about 5 more seconds. I'm personally a big Star Wars fan, so it's really exciting to put this question in there. All right, let's see who it was. Alec Guinness. That is the correct answer. He was the only person nominated for an Oscar for Star Wars. All right, Nadi, you are in first place. You're holding that lead strong. Let's keep it going. True or false? Parasite is the first foreign language movie to win an Oscar for Best Picture. Is this true? Is this false? Are you speechless? Have you seen it? If you've seen it, tell me your favorite part of the movie. I think it's one of the best movies I've ever actually seen. So with 4 more seconds, let's keep it going. And we're about to reveal our answer. It is true. That is a true statement there. And we are going to keep flying. Oh, the lead. You're holding it strong. This is so exciting, but it's anybody's game. Round 2, what in the word? We are going to have to figure out what that word means, or how would you define that word? Which word describes a commotion usually caused by an argument or a disagreement. This word is fun to say, not fun to be in, but very much fun to say. This was a really fun question to also explore. I looked up weirdest words in the English dictionary, and this was one of the answers. So pretty fun to have that in this question. All right, for everyone who answered kerfuffle, you are correct. What a fun word to say. I feel like we all just need to say that collectively. Kerfuffle. Whew, wow, you're on fire, everyone. This is so fun. We are speeding through here. A bibliophobia is the fear of what? Is it of failing? Is it running out of things to read? Is it eating apples? Or is it driving? Me personally, I'm truly afraid of driving, especially in San Francisco. It's quite scary, especially all those hills. So we're about to see the answer right now. Let's see what it is. Oh, you are all so smart and correct. It is running out of things to read. I hope we're all learning a little bit too. Wow, the lead has been taken over. This is exciting. But we're going to keep it going. What does the word wabbit mean? No, it is not in reference to Bugs Bunny, even though fans of Looney Tunes might think so. This is actually a word. So does it mean enticed, evolved, exhausted, or energized? Throw in your answers. The clock is going, and we're about to see what it means in 2 seconds. Exhausted, exactly. I'm sure after today, your minds will be exhausted, but energized with information on talent acquisition. And we're just keep flying through here. All right, round 3. This is my favorite round because I kind of chose foods that I liked. We're going to see food. So what's going to happen is it's going to slowly unveil a picture. You have to type in what it is before that picture is complete. So let's start naming that food. What is our first picture? I don't know what it could be. All I really see right now is a plate. Okay, we kind of see some imagery here. Make sure to type in your answer. Spelling is important. So if you're not sure, I would just maybe Google it really quick and make sure that you're right. Okay, 4 more seconds. What is that? And it is an eclair or a chocolate eclair. So anyone who wrote an eclair, congratulations, you have won. All right, we're going to keep going. Name that next food. This food is definitely one of my favorite foods of all times. I could truly eat this every day. It's from a fast food restaurant. What do we think this is? Can you tell yet? What could it be? It is, in fact, a Crunchwrap Supreme. Best thing on the Taco Bell menu. I will go to my grave with that. All righty, we're going to keep it rolling here as we have more content to share. This is our last image of the seafood category. I wonder what it could be. It's very popular. I love to eat it. I don't know. Tell me in the comments if you love to eat it or what toppings you like to put on this food. Let's see what it is. And there we go. It is avocado toast. Congratulations to everyone who figured that out. Delicious, delicious times. All right, we're going to our next category. On this day in history, it is September 29th. What happened? So on this day in 1916, American oil tycoon blank becomes the world's first billionaire. Was it J.P. Morgan, John D. Rockefeller, Cornelius Vanderbilt, or Andrew Carnegie? Click that just as soon as you can, and then we will reveal the answer in 2 seconds. Here we go. You are all so smart. It is John D. Rockefeller. He was the world's first billionaire today in 1916. In 1954, an MLB legend made a famous over-the-shoulder catch to win Game 1 of the World Series. I will give you a small hint. This person played for my personal local team, the San Francisco Giants. Type in your answers, get those in there, and we will reveal the answer in just about 7 seconds here. If you're not a Giants fan, I'd love to know what team you root for baseball. It's always kind of fun to hear that. Alrighty, so who was it? It was Willie Mays. Congratulations, everyone who got Willie Mays. Wow, 24, and that was his number. That's kind of cool. Love when things like that happen. Alrighty, we are cruising through. On this day in 1984, this Prince song peaked at number 1. All 4 of these songs are from the Purple Rain soundtrack, but one went Number 1 today. Was it When Doves Cry, I Would Die for You, Purple Rain, or Let's Go Crazy? Let me know in the answers, and then we'll see what the reveal is in about a second. Wow, a lot of people thought it was Purple Rain, but it's actually Let's Go Crazy from the Purple Rain album. Very exciting. Ooh, wow, look at these numbers. I love to see it, but we're going to keep going to the last round. Round 5, random facts of kindness. So which one of these countries knighted a penguin? Penguins are so cute. I would knight one if I could, but which country did this? Was it Ireland? Was it Norway? Was it Greenland, or was it Sweden? Let me know what you think, and I'm excited to share with you who it was, and maybe we'll all go travel there one day. Let's see. It was Norway. Norway knighted a penguin. That's so cute. I love it. Amazing. All right. Our next question is, how many times did the Beatles use the word love in their songs? Was it 613 times, 498 times, 307 times, or 1,042 times? Would love to know what you think. I'm a big fan of the Beatles. I actually saw Paul McCartney recently, and it was amazing. So go ahead, tell me what you think. 613 is the answer. So congratulations to 64 of you. Another weird circumstances, because there's a song that the Beatles sing about when I'm 64. I love how things are working like that. All right, this is our last question. This is for all you animal fans out there. Which animal will headbutt you as a way of telling you that they trust you? Is it a cat? Is it a bunny? Is it a squirrel? Or is it a moose? I'd honestly be pretty afraid if a moose tried to headbutt me, but if it meant that they trusted me, that would be actually kind of cool. Scary, but cool. All right, let's see the answer. Yes, correct. It is a cat. And that is that.